Hello and welcome back to Leah Tries. Today I'm going to be talking about depression again because I'm kind of on a roll with this topic. I've been thinking about it a lot. It's been something that I've been talking to my therapist about as well. And I want to talk more about what goes on in your head when you are depressed. So specifically what type of thoughts you had and where the sort of behaviors that are associated with depression come from. So just a quick warning, this video will definitely have some sensitive topics in it. I am going to be doing my best to be as accurate and as honest as possible when discussing these topics, but I will try my best to be respectful. I also don't want to sugarcoat anything, so if you guys find this type of content upsetting, please feel free to click off onto another video. In my last video, I mentioned that depression can make doing simple things very difficult, like getting out of bed in the morning or eating meals daily. There are technically no physical changes or symptoms with depression, but your behavior does change. My therapist used to call this my depression goggles because it made me see everything differently. Again, I want to mention that there are some dark topics ahead, but I also think that it's important to be open about mental illness and the effects that it can have. As always, I want to remind you guys that I'm not a professional in this field. I am just an individual who has dealt with this thing for a while. I've dealt with it over and over again in the last couple of years, and like I mentioned in my last video, I experienced these waves. I am on medication that makes a tremendous difference for me, but I still experience my waves, just to a lesser degree. It still affects my moods and my attitude towards myself. In this video, I'm going to mention some general examples of how depression can affect your behavior, and I'm going to talk about the types of thoughts that you can have that cause these behaviors. Sometimes when you're depressed, you become lethargic or tired. It makes you seem kind of drained and like you have no energy. I've definitely struggled with this a lot. It's something that comes from a lack of motivation, I think, because it kind of feels pointless to try. Because no matter what, I'll have a bad day, so why even bother? Why do anything if everything you do is bad? Why exercise if you don't deserve to feel good? Why eat or get dressed or leave the room? What is the point if nothing will change how I feel? Antisocial behavior is definitely something that I've experienced. I begin to function on autopilot, doing only what I know I need to and nothing more. I think it comes from a place of trying to protect myself, but I end up pushing everyone away. I think that this is a way for me to punish and destroy myself over time because I just don't think that I deserve to have good things in my life. I feel like people will be better off without me. If I see anyone, I risk being exposed, and I risk having people find out that I'm less than they are. Or at least that's how I used to feel. And these are the thoughts that would kind of take over my mind, and it would affect everything that I did because I would interpret it in a different way. Anyway, let me get back to examples. My eating behavior has definitely been affected over the last couple of years, and it's been strange because it's been in different ways. When I was younger, I would eat to comfort myself when I was sad. I still do that sometimes now, and I think that it's okay to do in moderation, but I was eating a lot of sugar, and this would push my blood sugar levels up, and I would feel amazing. But then my blood sugar would drop, and I would be even more miserable than before. Only now I've consumed 10 times the amount of sugar I'm supposed to in a week. And this would just lead me to have even more emotional stress. It was a self-feeding cycle, literally. Let's buy some chocolate. Maybe I'll feel better. But what if it doesn't make me feel good? Maybe I should get two instead. And some cookies. And some ice cream. You know, just in case. These were the conversations I would have with myself in my head. I would negotiate and negotiate until I bought half the store. This was a really unhealthy habit that I built up over time because every time I felt sad, I would just go over to eating and I would just lose control entirely. Later in life, I started to interpret people's behavior towards me differently, and I think I started to blame myself more, and I would use food to punish myself, essentially to distract from feeling this sort of painful numbness that depression caused me. I felt like I deserved feeling this way because I felt like I was less than others. I felt like I deserved to suffer and struggle because I was worse than everyone around me. And once I sort of felt hungry and I was almost, maybe not in pain, but you sort of get that empty feeling. It would almost be satisfying because I knew that I was depriving myself of something that I needed. It would combat the other negative feelings that I had. So the next one that I want to talk about is anxiety and panic. Anxiety is known to be closely linked with depression, and often people who suffer from one experience the other to a degree. I also struggle with anxiety. Don't forget to check out my other videos on anxiety and how to deal with it. I've had panic attacks in the past, but I'm much better at dealing with my anxiety now than I've ever been before, so I do not experience them as often. But when it does happen, it's painful and it's exhausting and it's embarrassing. I'll make another video on panic attacks specifically, but for now all I will say is that I avoid it at all costs. My next topic that I want to talk about is self-harm, because I think that self-harm occurs in a lot of different ways. You can think of self-harm in terms of your relationships. You might be destroying your own relationships. You can think of it in a more literal and physical way where people hurt themselves physically. It's definitely something that I've done in multiple ways, similar to when I was depriving myself of food. That was definitely something that caused me harm, and it was something that I was doing on purpose. And I've also experimented and experienced other forms of self-harm. It's not something that I'm proud of, but I definitely have gotten a better understanding because I've experienced it. I'm sure that there are many reasons why people harm themselves, but for me there has only ever really been one, and that was to kind of get relief from the numbness that I was feeling. Like months would pass, literally months, where I would just have sort of no and for a while the only thing that gave me relief from the mental and emotional strain was hurting myself. And even now, when something emotionally distressing happens to me, the first thing that will come to mind is usually self-harm. It's not something that I do anymore, not for a long time anyway, but it's definitely something that still comes to mind, and it's something that hasn't really left me. There are many ways to self-harm, and as I mentioned earlier, eating can be a form of self-harm, or not eating can be a form of self-harm. I will not be mentioning more methods though. I don't want to spread ideas that someone might be able to use to hurt themselves, so if that is something that you're interested in, that you're not going to find that type of thing on my channel. It's just not something that I want to condone or encourage. This is a topic that's really important to me, and I feel like you never have to feel like you have to harm yourself in order to feel better, because you end up destroying more of yourself than you end up healing. And the only true relief, the only sort of sustainable relief that I've ever experienced from my desire to self-harm has been from therapy and indirectly my medication. So I would recommend that if you are experiencing thoughts of self-harm or some sort of craving to harm yourself, please seek professional help. It really is not the right choice to make and not the right path to choose. And then the last one that I wanted to talk about was being over-emotional or overreacting. That's something that I definitely used to do all the time. My moods were very unstable, especially when I wasn't controlling my diet as much as I am now. When I was having a bad day or a bad week, the problem would become 100 times worse. I think I was trying to make others feel as frustrated and as angry as I felt at times, because I would just lose it sometimes, and it felt like no one understood how they were making me feel, and I was sort of aiming it outwards so that other people would feel my frustration. I'm not normally the type of person who thinks of harming others physically or emotionally, but I just had to explode sometimes. My moods were just so unstable that I would be fine one minute and then I would be in the worst mood ever the next minute, and no one really had a way to tell, so no one knew that they would have to maybe be more sensitive towards me. I didn't know that I had to control my blood sugar levels better in order to help stabilize my mood, because I'm such an up and down person in general. Being very stable in the rest of my life is actually really important to me, but that's not something that I knew at the time, and no one really knew how to react to me, so it would kind of result in my family like having to tiptoe around my feelings 24/7. I think that it's something that affected my family a lot, especially when we went away on holiday and had sort of a lot of one-on-one time with each other, because I was so unpredictable. But as I mentioned, this has become much better since I've started eating less sugar and not binging on food whenever I feel like it or when I'm having a bad day. I've realized that there's just better ways to control my emotional outbursts than to just kind of let it happen and to just be awful to people that don't deserve it and that don't really understand why you're acting the way you are. These thoughts and feelings are something that I experience pretty much all the time. All of these behaviors are inherently a big part of me because I've been dealing with depression for so long that I really try to look out for these behaviors, because it's important to kind of monitor yourself and to know that when these behaviors start becoming worse or increasing in terms of the frequency of how often they happen, you need to perhaps see a doctor, you need to perhaps speak to someone. Maybe there's something going on in your life. As I said before, this video, I just wanted to talk about these topics because it has taken a lot of hard work to change how I see myself and my mental illness, but I'm so glad that I've gotten to the point where I am now, and I don't really see myself as a victim of depression anymore, and I think I've realized that I have more control in my life than I thought. My medication has also helped me make a lot of strides, but mostly what has changed my lifestyle is the ability to keep an open mind and to have my perspective changed. I think that I'm a very stubborn person normally, and I think that keeping a more open mind, that there are solutions available and that everything isn't necessarily how I think it is and how I see it is, has really helped me to make a lot of personal development from this sort of experience. Thank you so much for watching my video. I'm sorry for all the sad stories in the last couple of videos. I've been dealing with a lot of these thoughts, like I said, in therapy, so it's just stuff that I've been thinking about. I'm not sad about it. I'm not throwing a pity party. I'm in a really good place. I just want to talk more about just kind of where your head goes when you get it to a dark space. I don't think that everyone understands necessarily. I think that there are a lot of people that never really experience depression, and I can understand why they would find it confusing, because it is absolutely confusing. When growing up and learning to deal with all of this, my mom went through everything with me. She has never struggled with depression or any sort of mood disorder really, and it took us a long time to learn how to talk about it, and I'm so grateful for her. She never gave up on me or made me feel like I was broken or useless, and I went through a lot of times when I couldn't say a single positive thing about myself, and she was always there to remind me. She's always been ready to help me whenever I was brave enough to ask for it, and even when I didn't know what to ask for, she supported me regardless. So this video is kind of to say thank you for my mom. I think that having a mom like her made a tremendous difference in me, especially now being able to cope with mental illness. So thank you, Mom. Yeah, so don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you guys next time.